Hello and welcome to Stillness in the Storms. On today's podcast, I'm talking about how the thought funnel shapes your reality and how to reshape it. But just before that, I just want to say thank you to this week's donators, Laurie, and there's a couple of others anonymous. So thank you guys. I don't have a sponsor. You make this podcast possible. It's as simple as that. So thank you very much. And if you want to donate, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to stevenwebb.uk. The link's in the show notes. But also, I'm asking this week for questions from you. You can also go to a link in the show notes, stevenwebb.uk. It's the same link. I want you to submit your questions, and I will answer them all in one podcast. If you're having trouble with meditation, if you're having trouble silencing your thoughts or trying to calm that overthinking mind or anxiety or anything, doesn't matter what you're having trouble with, what you're struggling with, send the question to me with some context. You can also say whether or not it's anonymous or whether you are okay me saying the name on the podcast. And also you can send me a private question. I won't answer it on the podcast. I might answer it in a generic way, but I certainly won't answer it in the way that you ask. But you can ask me anything as well. So ask me some, things about private life, things about my disability or things like that. Anything at all that you've just been curious about me and the way I do things, feel free to ask those questions as well. So I want to put a podcast together, and the most embarrassing thing is if I come here in 2 weeks' time and go, no one sent me a question. So there's no dumb questions. If you've got a question, you've got something in mind, anything at all you think I might be able to help with or shed some light onto it, please message me. Just go to stevenwebb.uk and you can message me. Anyway, that's enough about that. Let's get on with today's show. Today's show is another way of telling you the same similar things. And the reason why I do it in so many different ways is because very often my teacher, Junpo, would frame it in a different way, the similar way to Alan Watts does, a similar way to other teachers and all that. Just frame it in a different way. And I like analogies or metaphors. I'm not sure if they're analogies or metaphors, but I like to see something in a way that makes sense to me. And this funnel of thoughts makes sense to me. Now, I don't think it's a new idea. I certainly don't think it's anything that I've come across in a way that I explain it, but that doesn't mean other teachers and other people don't explain it in a similar way. It just helps me to think of it in this way. So the way the funnel works, and I want you to visualize this because it will help you to understand how things happen and how we end up in such a mess sometimes. And that is, the funnel is like, right at the very bottom is you've got your point of origin. It's just a little small point where nothing's happening. But that's the whole point of, in that point, everything is possible. Every thought, every feeling, every emotion rises from that point. And that's right down the bottom. That can be in the bottom of your head. It can be anywhere. It really doesn't matter where that is. And then out of that comes up all the thoughts, comes up all the feelings and emotions. And it's like a funnel structure because the higher it goes, the more complicated, the more things we add to it, the bigger it becomes. There's one example I can use, and you can do this experiment with me now while you're listening to the podcast. And even if you're driving, you can do this. It really doesn't matter. Just be a little bit careful. But if you look around you now and look at any objects around you and don't dwell on them, just look at them long enough to recognize what the object is and then move off. So I'm looking around, I've got a fan, I've got a light, I've got a Buddha there, I've got a 3D printer, I've got a mic in front of me, I've got a computer, I've got a camera. And they're just objects when I look around. But if I stop on them and I look at the camera, And then if I stay on it for a minute and then the camera's looking at me, it's filming, and now I feel nervous, and now I feel... And I move to the Buddha and I look at him and he's calm when he's sitting there, and then feelings arise. My meditation wasn't very good this morning and he's doing better than me. I'm not doing very well. And I move to my 3D printer and it's like, oh, I've got so many projects that I need to print out. And so instantly, when we dwell on anything, when a thought arises, when we see a subject, we automatically, within a few moments, right, instantaneously almost, it becomes a story, it becomes a feeling, an emotion. And the more we stay there, the higher, more complex, the more things we add to it. So with the camera, it's a camera. And then I add what it does. It films me. And then I added how I'm feeling about it and the nervousness. And then I start adding the story of what I'm not doing, and I should be doing more to my YouTube. And before I know it, I'm in this like a soup, this wonderful pea soup that's so thick and gluggy that I can't move, and I'm paralyzed, and it's near the top of the funnel, and you've added so much to it that you cannot think clearly. You cannot do anything with the current thoughts. And that's the reason why I like this funnel analogy so much, because all of our thoughts come from this single point. Almost everything starts with a thought, or starts with a view of something. And then that thought turns into what the thought is. You know, you're recognizing something, you're seeing it as a subject, you're seeing it as an object. Then we jump to a feeling with it, and we add that to it. And then we jump to a story with the feeling, with the object. And then we add more objects to it. And then we add more stories. And then we add stories from our past to it. And then stories from the future to it. And before you know it, just give me a break. And the problem is, most of us are not living in the point of origin, near that point of where everything comes out of, that's a fresh idea. This is the first time I've seen it. This is a new thought. We're living somewhere near the top of the funnel with everything going on, with everything that people are giving to us, the boss is giving to us, in work, or our family, our children, our parents, all the pressures of life, the time, the constraints and the money and the history and the past, as well as the future. It's just even saying that is just overwhelming. And that's where we're trying to get out the top of the funnel rather than go to the bottom of the funnel. If that makes any sense. We're trying to avoid the pea soup or the lake that we've so clouded with different emotions and thoughts. And just imagine each thought and every story and thing is adding a colour to this wonderful, peaceful lake. Now, then what we can do is in meditation is we go back to the point of origin. And the more we go back there, the more we see a thought arise. And then, do we go with the thought or not? Do we go with that feeling or the story? Suddenly, sometimes we find ourselves in story halfway up the funnel. And we go, no, let's go back to the point of origin. It's just a story, it's just a thought. And then it happens again, and it happens again. And this is what life is doing. Life is a constant arising out of the point of origin in the funnel. Nothing you can do about it. That's what the mind does. That's what you've evolved to do. If you didn't do that, you'd probably, you wouldn't have done because you don't live in a forest with bears. But humans would never have evolved if we didn't evolve this ability to have thought, have feeling, have story. If we didn't do all those things, if we didn't have the imagination to build the funnel, we wouldn't have survived and evolved like we have done. It simultaneously kept us alive and kept us moving forward while also creating more complex and more thick pea soup. I can't think of another analogy. I just love that analogy of just trying to wade through, like, I don't know, alphabet soup or something like that. It's just too much sometimes. And what is really interesting is the emotions that come up closer to the point of origin, the point of concept, the point that this moment arises in every single given moment, because it's always here. What's really interesting with the funnel is everything in the funnel comes and goes. What doesn't come and go is the point of origin. Just that underneath the funnel. Just pure awareness before the thought. What is there before the thought? If I slow down my words now and I just make you wait just a moment between each word. If I leave it at the right gap, it makes you just be awareness. Because you're waiting for the next word, but it's not long enough for a thought to creep in. Then if I leave it too long, then it becomes awkward and thoughts are coming in and stories, and it's like you've left 4 seconds on a podcast. It's like, that's silent. That's not right. Is the radio broke? Is the radio broke? Like you're listening to this on an old FM radio in a car. Maybe you are. I don't know. And you just wonder if the phone's gone wrong. Is it still playing the MP3? Is the internet broken? Things like that. So we jump into all these thoughts constantly. But what is really interesting is, I keep saying that phrase, one of the main points I'd like you to take away is everything in the funnel comes and goes. The stories may not necessarily be true or real. They certainly aren't real, but they may not be true in regards to how it happened or what happened. The feelings come and go. They vary, they change. They get stronger and more solidified the higher in the funnel we go. The higher into this drifting into beyond reality. See, we think the reality is sitting on top of the funnel with all the thoughts, all the stories. We think that's the reality. And the reality isn't. The real reality is just pure awareness before the funnel starts creeping in. That's the real reality. That's the permanent. That's always here. You may not be always aware that the awareness is always here, but it's always here. Always was. Before you had story, before you had thoughts, before you had complex emotions, when you were just, I was hungry or cold or I was uncomfortable thing. You know, you didn't know all the other complex emotions you could have at that point. You didn't know all the desires that you could have. You didn't know what mint chocolate chip ice cream tastes like at the age of 2 weeks old. You know, you didn't know you could desire that at that point. So that wasn't an option in the funnel. So your funnel was much simpler. And can you see what I mean by when I say it comes and goes, all these different things in there? So how do we get back to the beginning of that funnel? Well, you meditate, you sit down, you take time out, and you observe the funnel happening. That is the key, is observing the funnel happening. So you observe when a thought comes in, you go, here it is. And it's almost like you're watching it, you're experiencing it, you're aware of it happening. And then the thought turns into a feeling, or adds a feeling to it, adds a layer, adds some substance to it. Just like you're adding sugar to a cup of tea, you have the water. At that point, it's just water. Then you add the heat, and now it's hot water. And then you add the milk. It's now cloudy water. Now you add the coffee. It's now milky, murky, dirty, clouded water. But now it has taste. And then you add the sugar. It's now sweet, murky, dirty, clouded, hot water. And as you can see, the more layers we add, the more things we add to it, the more joy it may give us. The more hassle or anxiety or stress it may give us as well. It may overwhelm us. It may make us overthink too much, because we're suddenly then stuck in this, adding more and more to it. Do you notice how coffee years ago was okay? Now you go to a coffee chain, you've got all the cappuccinos and lattes and cold coffee. What is it with cold coffee and cold tea? What are you guys doing to the world? See, I'm jumping into the funnel now. So, going back to the awareness in the funnel, the very interception of when thoughts arise right at the base of the funnel. What's the first feelings that comes in? Well, the first feelings are almost always loving and caring, because you care about the thought. And then the feelings get more complex, and then the guilt and the shame and the hating and the not liking, the aversion and the pulling and the desiring. All of those things come in later. But initially, the first emotion is nearly always caring. First of all, you care about the thought. Then you care about the story and care about the person or item or whatever it is. And then the complex story comes in, and it becomes way more complex than. But we don't have to make everything complex. See, you can choose to go on a storyline in the funnel. You can choose what is added to it. And when you get really good at playing this game of awareness in the funnel and awareness of mind, you see the joke behind it all. You see that maybe everything that in the past, or certainly the future, it hasn't happened yet we're thinking about it like as if it has happened. Yeah, fascinating. So there's my podcast this week, is think about the funnel and think about how often you get in the funnel. And if you're struggling with something, how high up are you in this funnel? Are you at the pea soup level at the top, or alphabet soup, that you're wading through something that you cannot even enjoy anymore, because now you need a boat, and then you need oars, and then you need, oh God, just the thought of it is just, take time out, just go to the base of the funnel and simplify everything to, here's a thought. Do I add a feeling? Do I add a story to it? Really interesting. Anyway, that's my podcast this week. Again, thank you to Laurie. You guys are awesome. And there's a few other anonymous donators this week. You do make the podcast happen. And don't forget the questions. But you can do all this by going to stevenwebb.uk. You can also sign up to the Weekly Calm newsletter. Just go to stevenwebb.uk. The link's in the thing. You can do everything from there. And take care. You're awesome. Have an awesome week, and I love you.